On a sunny Tuesday morning, Clarence and Martha Reed, a couple in their early 70s, walked hand in hand into the gleaming showroom of Sterling Motors, the most prestigious luxury car dealership in downtown Atlanta. Clarence wore a well-worn beige jacket and his favorite flat cap, while Martha had on a modest lavender dress with a light scarf tied around her neck. Their clothes were simple, their demeanor humble, but their eyes sparkled with curiosity and quiet joy. They had spent decades working hard. Clarence as a high school custodian, Martha as a church librarian. Now retired, they were finally ready to fulfill a small dream: to sit in a luxury car, maybe even test drive one just once. Not necessarily to buy, but to experience what they had only admired from a distance all their lives. As they stepped inside, the polished floors reflected their silhouettes against rows of shining Bentleys, Lamborghinis, and Rolls-Royces. The air smelled of new leather and cologne. Conversations echoed between well-dressed customers and sharply suited associates. Clarence's eyes drifted toward a deep midnight blue Rolls-Royce, his lips parting in silent awe. "Look at that, baby," he whispered to Martha. "It's even more beautiful up close." But the moment of wonder didn't last. From behind a marble reception desk, a man in a black tailored suit stood watching them. His name was Chad Whitmore, a senior sales consultant known for his charm with wealthy clients, and his intolerance for what he called time wasters. Chad's blue eyes scanned Clarence and Martha from head to toe, his lips curling into a barely hidden sneer. He exchanged a smirk with another employee nearby before striding toward them, his designer shoes tapping against the tile like gavel strikes. "Can I help you with something?" Chad asked, his voice artificially sweet, with a sharp edge hiding underneath. "Yes, sir," Clarence replied politely. "We were just admiring that blue Rolls over there. Mind if we ask a few questions about it?" Chad raised his brows, clearly amused. "That model starts at $900,000, he said, his tone suddenly dry. "People who usually inquire about it have a certain kind of profile." Martha's smile faded. "We're just looking," she said softly. "Well," Chad said, crossing his arms, "this dealership caters to a very specific clientele. We prefer serious buyers, not tourists." At that, a few chuckles floated in from the customer lounge. A woman in oversized Gucci sunglasses leaned over to her friend, muttering something with a smirk. Another employee, standing nearby with a clipboard, turned her head slightly and grinned. Clarence stood a little taller. "We understand," he said calmly, though his voice had lost its warmth. "We'll be on our way." "Probably for the best," Chad replied with a tight smile. "Wouldn't want anyone feeling uncomfortable." The silence in the room was loud. Every gaze followed the couple as they turned around and slowly made their way to the door. No one offered help. No one tried to stop them. The grand glass entrance slid open with a hiss, and the world outside welcomed them back. Not with comfort, but with the same indifferent rush of traffic and noise. Standing on the steps outside, Martha gripped Clarence's arm. Her voice was barely audible. "I just didn't think people still looked at us like that." Clarence didn't answer right away. He stared at the reflection of the dealership window, where Chad still stood watching, arms folded like he'd just won something. "I'm sorry, baby," Clarence finally said, his voice heavy. "Maybe we shouldn't have come here." Martha shook her head gently, eyes glistening, but refusing to let the tears fall. "No, we did nothing wrong." And they hadn't. But as they walked down the steps, their hearts bore the quiet weight of shame that wasn't theirs to carry. Not yet, knowing that the next day, everything would change. That evening, the warm Georgia sun dipped below the horizon, casting long golden streaks across the windows of the Reeds' cozy brick home in East Atlanta. The house was quiet except for the clinking of silverware and the low hum of the air conditioning. Clarence and Martha sat at their modest dinner table, poking at their plates more than eating, their appetite long gone. Across from them sat their only son, Michael Reed, a 36-year-old tech entrepreneur known in Atlanta's business circles as a quiet powerhouse. His tailored shirt was still crisp from meetings earlier in the day, but his expression had softened into concern. He had noticed something was off the moment he stepped through the door. His parents were always warm and cheerful around the dinner table, trading old stories, chuckling over forgotten memories. But tonight, their voices were absent, replaced by long pauses and the kind of silence that spoke volumes. "Mom," Michael finally said, setting down his fork. "Dad, did something happen today?" Clarence looked up, startled. Martha hesitated, her eyes flickering toward her husband, as if asking permission to speak. When Clarence gave her a faint nod, she exhaled shakily. "We went to that dealership downtown today," she began, her voice fragile. "You know, the one with the big silver R on the sign. We just wanted to see the cars, that's all. But they looked at us like we didn't belong." Michael sat still, his face unreadable. "They treated us like criminals," Clarence added, voice low. "That salesman, he made it real clear. He didn't want folks like us in there." Michael's jaw tensed. "Did he say that?" "He didn't have to," Martha whispered. "He let it show in every word, every look. There were people laughing. Michael, we didn't make a scene, we just left." For a moment, no one said anything. The ticking of the kitchen clock filled the silence. Then Michael pushed his chair back slowly and stood, walking over to the window. Outside, the city lights blinked softly in the distance, unaware of the ache that now filled the room behind them. He turned around, his face calm but eyes burning with quiet fire. "You two didn't do anything wrong," he said firmly. "What happened today, that's on them, and I promise you, it won't go unanswered." "Michael," Martha said gently, "we don't want you to get into any trouble. You've worked so hard for everything you have." Michael raised a hand, silencing her with tenderness. "Mom, Dad, I've spent my whole life watching you carry yourselves with grace and dignity, even when people were cruel, even when they never gave you the respect you deserved. But today," he paused, his voice dropping, "today, someone disrespected the two best people I've ever known." Clarence looked up, the hurt still heavy in his eyes. "We didn't expect anything fancy, son. We just wanted to look." "I know," Michael said. "And tomorrow morning, that same dealership's going to know exactly who they turned away." He turned and walked down the hallway to his office, closing the door quietly behind him. Inside, he sat at his mahogany desk, opened his laptop, and typed in a familiar login. A few keystrokes later, the order was placed. 2 Rolls-Royce boat tails, custom black, immediate delivery. Then he made a call. A voice answered. "Good evening, Mr. Reed. How can I help you?" Michael's voice was low, unwavering. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Deliver both vehicles to Sterling Motors, and make sure everyone sees them arrive." There was a pause, then, "Yes, sir." "Understood." Michael ended the call and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't revenge he was after. It was something deeper, something older, something sacred, dignity. And in that moment a quiet resolve took root in him, like steel cooling into form. The kind that doesn't rage. It just moves forward with purpose. Tomorrow wasn't about proving wealth. It was about restoring something that never should have been questioned in the first place. The next morning, the staff at Sterling Motors began their day like any other. Polished glass doors opened to the hum of jazz music and the scent of fresh espresso. Sales associates checked their schedules. Managers reviewed inventory. A few early customers strolled through, admiring sleek curves and chrome trims. Then it happened. At exactly 9 a.m., 2 Rolls-Royce boat tails, each an elegant masterpiece in obsidian black, glided to a stop outside the dealership. Their presence was impossible to ignore. Low, graceful, exuding quiet authority. Passers-by slowed. Phones came out. Even the receptionist stood up from her desk, squinting through the sunlight. The dealership's employees gathered behind the front glass wall, murmuring. "Who the hell ordered those?" someone whispered. And then the doors opened. Out stepped Michael Reed, dressed in a custom gray suit that fit him like armor. His presence was composed, calm, yet something about him felt immovable, like a wave just before it breaks. From the second vehicle, Clarence and Martha followed, wearing the same simple clothes as the day before. But this time, there was no shame in their stride. They walked with quiet dignity, heads high, hearts steady. Inside, Chad Whitmore glanced up from his desk and froze. The color drained from his face as realization swept over him. His smirk from yesterday evaporated, replaced by a stiff jaw and twitching fingers. "No, it can't be," he muttered, backing away slightly. Michael entered first, holding the door open for his parents. The entire showroom fell silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Associates turned. Customers stared. Michael's voice, when he finally spoke, was calm and firm. "We came back to remind you, and everyone here, of something you forgot yesterday." He turned to his parents, offering a gentle nod before turning his attention back to the stunned employees. "My name is Michael Reed, CEO of Reed Tech. Yesterday my parents, Clarence and Martha, were insulted and dismissed here, judged not by who they are, but by what they wore, and by the color of their skin." Chad flinched. A few employees looked down at their shoes. One woman took a quiet step back. Michael continued, his tone unwavering. "That's not just bad business, that's disgraceful." He turned to the front counter. "I'd like to speak to the manager now." Within seconds, a tall man in a navy blazer appeared, clearly rattled. "Mr. Reed, I wasn't aware of what happened. Please understand, this isn't how we conduct ourselves." "Then show me the footage," Michael said. "Let everyone here see it. Let's all watch exactly how your team treats people they think don't fit the profile." The manager hesitated, swallowed hard and nodded. Of course, right away. The next few minutes felt like hours. On a large showroom monitor, the footage from the previous morning played. Chad's arrogance, his sneers, his final cutting words. "People like you don't belong here." The room grew heavy. Several staff members shifted uncomfortably. Even the customers watching looked visibly shaken. When the video ended, Michael stepped forward again. "This is what prejudice looks like. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it smiles while shutting the door in your face." Then he turned to Chad. "I don't need an apology. What you did said enough. But I hope you realize today just how wrong you were." Chad opened his mouth, then closed it again. His jaw clenched. His hands trembled. The manager cleared his throat. "Mr. Whitmore," he said grimly, "you're dismissed, effective immediately." Gasps swept the floor. No one argued. No one defended him. As Chad left, defeated and pale, Clarence reached over and gently took Martha's hand. Her eyes shimmered, but this time not with humiliation, with quiet vindication. Michael turned to the receptionist. "Now, let's continue the conversation my parents tried to have yesterday. They'd like to take a proper look at that Rolls-Royce. A young woman, Emily, her name tag read, stepped forward without hesitation. She'd witnessed the scene yesterday and had wanted to speak up but hadn't been brave enough. Today, she found her voice. "Mr. and Mrs. Reed," Emily said warmly, "it would be my honor to show you the vehicle." Clarence smiled softly. Martha nodded, her lips trembling with gratitude. And as they followed Emily toward the same car they'd admired the day before, the atmosphere in the dealership had completely shifted. Not because of wealth, but because one family had returned. Not for revenge, but for restoration. Inside the showroom, Emily led Clarence and Martha with quiet confidence. Her steps were graceful but purposeful, her voice gentle as she introduced the Rolls-Royce, no longer as a luxury item, but as an experience meant to be shared with dignity. "This model," she said, opening the door for Martha, "is designed not just for comfort, but for presence. It's about more than a drive. It's about how the world sees you, or how you choose to let it." Martha smiled, her eyes still misty. "You're very kind, dear." Emily returned the smile. "You deserve to be treated with respect. Always." As Clarence settled into the driver's seat, his hands gently gripped the wheel, feeling the soft leather under his palms. For a moment he was quiet, then nodded slowly, a small, genuine smile forming on his lips. "It fits," he said. Emily's smile grew warmer. "That's all that matters." A few feet away, Michael stood beside the manager, watching his parents reclaim a piece of joy they never should have been denied. Then he turned toward Emily. "Emily," he said clearly. She turned, startled. The entire showroom grew silent again. Michael stepped forward. "Yesterday, you didn't laugh. You didn't turn away. You wanted to say something. I saw it in your eyes. And today, you showed the courage to step forward when it counted." He paused, then turned toward the manager. "I'd like to purchase this vehicle," he said, "and I want every penny of the commission to go to Emily Torres." Gasps rippled through the staff. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. "Mr. Reed, I was just doing what's right. I can't—" Michael shook his head. "That's exactly why you deserve it." He looked around the room, locking eyes with every employee who had once stared in judgment. "Kindness," he said slowly, "should never go unnoticed, especially in places where it's rare." The manager stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mr. Reed, I couldn't agree more, and I'd like to make an announcement." He turned to Emily. "Starting today, you're being promoted to senior sales manager. Your integrity and professionalism represent exactly what this dealership should stand for." Applause broke out, tentative at first, then swelling into genuine cheers. A few associates who had remained silent yesterday now clapped with heads slightly bowed, faces flushed with reflection.